Tomorrow never comes. You see, growing up in East Africa, I was always a professional yapper. I remember in grade 3, I used to like all the subjects. English, I loved it. Sciences, sciences and I had a little chemistry going on. But there was one subject I wasn't necessarily a fan of. Any guesses? Math. Who here doesn't like math? Okay, we're not that many. I didn't like math when I was growing up. And I remember my grade 3 teacher, Miss Ramadevi, used to love giving me math homework. Every time she'd give me math homework, I would pull out my signature move. It'd be the day of the homework. She'd be like, "Hey Ziyaan, where's your math homework?" And I'd be like, "Miss, I'll submit it tomorrow." The next day would come, and it'd be the day of the math homework, and she'd be like, "Hey Ziyaan, where's your math homework?" And I'd be like, "Miss, I'll submit it tomorrow." Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And at that point, Miss Ramadevi got so frustrated with me. I remember she was like, "Hey Ziyaan, it's been months now. Where's your math homework?" And I'd be like, "Miss, I'll submit it tomorrow." At that point, Miss Ramadevi was super angry. I remember she looked me straight into my eyes, kneeled down, and with the most serious face ever, she's like, "Ziyaan, that is not." Very demure, very mindful, very cutesy. I mean, imagine she made that up. No, but seriously, Miss Ramadevi said something to me that stuck with me my entire life. I want you to repeat after me. Tomorrow never comes. Tomorrow never comes. And at the time, I thought Miss Ramadevi was referring to my math homework. But little did I know that tomorrow never comes was a message that stuck with me my entire life. I mean, think about it for a second. How many times do we tell ourselves that we're going to do something tomorrow? That friend, exactly, that friend that you've always wanted to meet. That email that you've been too tired to send. That dream, that goal, that idea that you've waited too long to get started on. My goal today is to share with you this idea of tomorrow never comes, but also to share with you a framework that can take you from tomorrow never comes to actually getting started today. As I went on my journey, I remember still being that student that never used to submit his math homework. My parents got so concerned, they decided that it would be best for me to go to boarding school. I was 14 at the time. I remember being in grade 9, and my first year was quite difficult. I was still that student that would submit his homework late. I wasn't necessarily the best. I struggled quite a bit. And I remember on the last day of school of grade 9, there was a dengue fever outbreak. All of my friends got it. For those of you that don't know, dengue fever is like malaria but times 10. And given the circumstances at the time, I got it. I had to travel with it back to my home country. It took doctors 1 week to figure out what it was. And it gotten so bad, they said that if we waited any longer, your organs would start bleeding. So they rushed me into the hospital. I was there for a week. I promise that's my hospital bed and not a mugshot. And I remember eventually recovering. And the date that I got discharged was July 1st, 2017. I remember July 1st, 2017, I go back home super excited to go to bed, finally get rid of this hospital bed, and have one of the most interesting sleeps of my life. Have you guys ever had one of those sleeps where you have some of the most crazy dreams? Dreams that you can't really share publicly, right? I had one of those sleeps. I remember in my sleep, I'd done all these crazy things that wouldn't be appropriate to share on the stage. But one of the things that I did in that sleep was the setting was a mosque. It was quiet. People were seated like we are in this room. People had closed their eyes, super dedicated to their prayer. It was religious festivals at the time, and I remember closing my eyes, stepping in, putting my hands up, and being like, "My head's underwater, but I'm breathing fine. You're crazy and I'm out of my mind." And I wake up. My first reaction, at least I don't have to hit the high note on the TEDx stage. No, but for real, I remember waking up and checking my phone like we all do and seeing the home screen. The date on my home screen had said it was July 22nd. You guys remember the date I got discharged? July 1st. My initial reaction, similar to yours, is like, why is my phone showing me the wrong date? I go on social media, see I've posted all these things. I call my parents and all this confusion. They rush back home and they're like, Ziyaan, you're finally coming to your senses. I started explaining to them all these things that I'd experienced in this dream, and they told me that everything that I thought was a dream was in fact my experience for the last 3 weeks. I just lost 3 weeks of my life and had no recollection. We went to doctors. Doctors say that the dengue fever affected my brain functionality. We went to a psychologist. At the time, she misdiagnosed me for bipolar disorder and said I went through a manic episode. We went to religious priests. Religious priests thought I was possessed. Imagine being told you lost 3 weeks of your life. You may have not experienced dengue fever, but each one of us in this audience has gone through an experience that could have served as a turning point. Each one of us has gone through an experience that has been a reminder that our time on this planet is very temporary. What I want you to reflect on today as I share my presentation is think about how that experience has defined you. Think about what is that thing that you've been too scared to take. What is that action? As I went on my journey, I was very lucky when I went back to school after going through this experience. I had similar reflections. I knew I wanted to do something bigger than myself, but I didn't know what exactly that looked like. Fortunately, when I went back, I was an IB student and I was required to do a personal project between grade 9 and 10. I could do anything of my choice, but all I really cared about at the time was playing FIFA with my friends and watching soccer. So I remember the deadline approach for my personal project proposal, and I watched this documentary on Al Jazeera on my Facebook feed that said India's menstruation man. I was super curious because I never really learned about periods at the time, and I chatted with my mom about it. My mom told me that when she was younger, just like 500 million women and girls around the world, there was a point in her life where she didn't have access. So I decided to do something about this in my personal project. I remember doing all this research online, looking at different prototypes. This is me in my dorm room. Don't judge how messy it is. Actually coming up with reusable menstrual products for my project. I remember spending a whole year on this and distributing these products to 22 people in my community. And 1 year later, on my personal project exhibition, I put on blue jeans, black turtleneck, glasses on, and I called my project the iPad. Okay, this is the actual picture. And I remember being super proud and super, satisfied with this project that I spent 1 year on. Why do I share this with you? Step number one of going from tomorrow never comes to actually getting started today is taking initiative. You're probably wondering, how do we take initiative though? Fast forward in my journey, I remember doing this incubator in Canada called Next Canada. And I'd worked on a fintech startup at the time, but like 95%, 99% of my ideas, that startup failed. But there was one thing that I took away from that Next Canada experience was, how do I actually take initiative? A lot of times, one reason why we stop ourselves from doing what we want is we overthink it, right? We think maybe I'm not perfect for this. Maybe this is too big for me. I don't have the experiences to do that. I mean, think about it. When I was doing this, did I have any experience in this space? Did I ever get a period? No, right? But I decided to do something about this. In your own experiences, think about how whenever you have an idea, whenever you have something you want to work on, how do you reframe it as a 6-week experiment? I remember when I was in university and I learned this tool, I wrote down all the different things that I wanted to work on. Consulting at a point, tech, podcasting, newsletter, and I wrote down all these different things. I was not an expert in any of them, but these are ideas that I wanted to work on. And in university, I spent 6 weeks each trying to work on these ideas. Think about what that 6-week experiment looks like for you. As I went on in my journey, this is my brother, my older brother, Amel. Looking back in my journey, I remember growing up and seeing my brother's Instagram bio. His Instagram bio always used to say, you have to be odd to be number one. At the time, I didn't really understand it. But looking back in my experiences, I realized step number 2 of whatever you want to do is actually owning your story. We all have this weird, quirky parts of us that we really never want to share, right? I mean, think about it. Me on stage, it's very embarrassing to share this dengue fever experience or to share that I worked on menstrual health. All my friends used to make fun of me. They used to call me the pad man. But instead of running away and trying to be, trying to fit into the crowd, I own my story. I made this part of myself. I really put into action this idea of you have to be odd to be number one. Think about for yourselves, what is that weird, quirky part of yourself that you're really hiding? What is that part of you that you don't want to showcase to the world, but it's really who you are? Step number two is owning your story. As I went through my experience and reflecting back on my time, step number three is developing systems. I'm very lucky right now. You remember how I shared my journey started as part of the IB personal project? One of the hats that I'm very lucky to wear today is actually working with IB, shout out Jen in the audience, and supporting with their youth strategy. And through my work with the IB, we get to interact with some of the smartest, brightest young people who are doing all these amazing, cool projects around the world. But one thing that I noticed from all of them is that a lot of these people struggle to go from a school and local level to actually expanding their work on a national or global level. Another thing that I notice is even if they do get that opportunity to expand their work, a lot of them end up burning out or end up not continuing that work long term. Why? Because they don't develop the right systems. Think about it in your own journey. What are some of the systems that you can develop in whatever you want to achieve? It could be going to the gym and having small, consistent actions that you can replicate every single day. It could be a big project that you have a system to slowly approach and make a big difference. Developing systems in my journey, what that looked like was when I was doing this project, I would design and document every step of the way. I did it in a way where if anyone saw the work that we did, all we could do is just send them all these documents to actually get started. And by doing that, we slowly started seeing some success. We managed to grow some of our work in all these different parts of the world, starting getting all these press. And one reason why we were able to also grow is I wasn't doing it alone. I had an amazing group of volunteers and an amazing team. I remember at the time, this is our first ever team, we were 7 to 10 people. And I remember at the time, because we had the systems, we would get all these people from around the world saying, how can we be part of your project? How can we grow? And we slowly started expanding in different countries, Canada, Pakistan, Bangladesh. At a point, we had 150 young people from all these different parts of the world. Now, you're probably wondering, how am I able to amplify my work? How am I able to build community in a world where we feel so isolated, right? In a world where there's so many people that we disagree with. In a world where there's all these different tensions and it's so hard to be on the same page as someone. One of my mentors who passed away earlier this year, His Highness the Aga Khan, he always used to talk about how it's so important to build bridges with the people that you don't agree with. He always talked about how it's so important to use your differences as an opportunity versus a challenge. My theory of change has always been, how do we involve people that we agree and disagree with and put them on the same table and align incentives? And so I did that. We slowly started getting traction for our work and getting all these press around the world. As I went along my journey, I remember finally seeing so much success, getting all this press, and fulfilling my parents' dream to get a full ride scholarship at university. I remember feeling like I finally made it. Life is so good. I'm having all this impact. But after my first year in university, I remember it being second term during COVID. And I woke up seeing my grades. And on Econ 102, I got a big fat F. 48 out of 100. At that point, I thought I'd made it, right? But instead, what I started realizing is that this whole time, all I was doing was trying to help other people, trying to do all these different things. But in the process of that, there was one person that I never necessarily took care of. And that person was myself. We live in a time where, with social media, with AI, with all these different things, we usually want instant gratification with things that we want, right? We usually want quick results and quick successes. me going through that experience, I realized that I was so burnt out and I had never really taken care of myself in that process. And I was reminded by this quote and this proverb that I grew up listening. Who here knows what flag this country is from? Tanzania. I grew up in Tanzania. And growing up, we always used to hear the following saying. Repeat after me. Haraka, haraka, haina baraka. Haraka, haraka, haina baraka. Haraka, haraka, haina baraka means fast, fast gives no rewards. Fast, fast gives no blessings. Whatever it is that you want to achieve, think about how you can take a slower approach. Think about how you can develop systems to really play the long game, right? Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I had to take a step back from my work too. I eventually tried out all these different things, did the 6 weeks experiments, and eventually got to a point where I figured out what I really wanted to do. I managed to build my current platform, Leaders of Today, that reaches 80,000 young people every week, and we've had incredible impact all over the world. But the way we were able to do that was applying step 5 of this 5-step framework, yes to evolving. Think about for yourself whatever it is that you want to do. Give yourself the permission to evolve and take a different path. Give yourself the permission to take a different step, right? It's okay to redefine yourself. It's okay to take a step back sometimes. Think about that in your own individual journeys. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, but this whole time, these 5 steps actually leads to the T.O.D.A.Y framework. The T.O.D.A.Y framework is something that you can apply in your own individual journeys, whether you're 7 years old or you're 70, whether it's with work, with school, or your own impactful careers. Step number 1, taking initiative. Step number 2, owning your story. Step number 3, developing systems. Step number 4, amplifying through community. And step number 5, saying yes to evolving. Think about which step you are in this, and remember that this is an infinity loop. In your journeys, you're going to keep going through the same 5 steps over and over again. And I see some of you nodding because you have been through one of these steps in your own careers. As I end my talk today, I actually wrote a spoken word for you folks. Would you guys like to hear it? They say tomorrow's coming, but I know better. That was a big fat F. They say tomorrow's coming, but I know better. It's a promise made, then lost to the weather. We wait, we stall, we push, we pray, but tomorrow never comes. Start today. You don't need permission. You don't need a sign. You don't need the stars to perfectly align. I mean, Malala didn't wait. Greta didn't ask. They just stood up and stepped to the task. So tell me, why not you? Why not now? Why not make the future bow to the choices that you make and the moves that you play? We're not leaders of tomorrow. We're leaders of today. But slow down. Haraka, haraka, haina baraka. Fast, fast gives no rewards. I mean, Elon, Mark, Sam, they build their empires tall, but what's the point if you lose it all? What's the legacy if it don't survive? What's a billion if your soul runs dry? I mean, impact ain't a sprint. It's a marathon game. So breathe, build, and play the long game. Here's the truth. The world doesn't need another Elon. The world doesn't need another Mark. The world doesn't need another AI genius playing their luck. The world needs you, and you, and you. Ready to lead, ready to stand, ready to feel. I hate to break this to you, but the clock is ticking. It's now time for you to make your play. Because remember, as my grade 3 teacher said, tomorrow never comes. Start today. My name is Ziyaan Virji. Thank you so much for listening to my TED Talk.